Hello everyone and welcome. Today we're talking about a practical way to grow your wealth. I recently read a book called The Richest Man in Babylon, and it goes through and explains a number of different characters and their financial story. There's a number of tradesmen who weren't getting ahead financially. They were thinking to themselves, how is it that we work every single day, yet we have no more to show for ourselves today than we did years ago? And in their conversation, they remembered a man named Arcad. Arcad was known as the richest man in Babylon. They thought to themselves, Arcad grew up with us. He had the same teachers and overall had the same upbringing. How is it that Arcad, growing up with us, is now known as the richest man of Babylon and has more gold than you could imagine? Meanwhile, we're here working every single day, not seeming to be able to get ahead. And the story goes on with them reaching out to Arcad and asking, how is it that you've accumulated so much wealth? Initially, they thought it was luck, but they figured, why don't we ask? And they told him, you grew up with us. How is it that you are so much more wealthy than the rest of us? Meanwhile, we had the same upbringing. Now, if you have not already read this book, I would encourage you to do so. A number of the principles in this book I've already been following, but it's really interesting to hear in this story format how the different financial principles are laid out. So this book is very encouraging in going through many different financial principles and how to build your wealth. And the first principle that is explained, which is what the tradesmen are asking Arcad, the richest man in Babylon, is the concept of paying yourself first. Arcad's response to the tradesman is that 1/10 of all you make is yours to keep. And their initial reaction to hearing that was, well, I have my paycheck, everything that I make is mine to keep. Arcad's response to that was, that's not true. You have all your bills that you're paying. A modern day example of this would be, you get your paycheck, you have to pay your mortgage or your rent, you have to pay car insurance, you have to pay for groceries. There's a whole number of items that you have to pay for. The story of your paycheck, if you were to look at it, it doesn't last very long. Your paycheck hits your bank account and then goes through and pays for all of your bills. And soon enough, there's no money left in that paycheck to pay for anything else. You've used it for all of your expenses. And this is the first point that Arcad, the richest man in Babylon, highlights to his former friends that he grew up with, that they should be setting aside no less than 10% of their income. And that you set aside 10% of your income, it may not seem like much now, but over time that grows. In a future video, we may get into what you're supposed to do with that money to make it grow even beyond that with compound interest and everything. But for today's video, we're focusing on paying yourself first. So let's look at a modern day example of paying yourself first, or keeping 1/10 of your income. And I would encourage you not to just stop at 1/10, but it is a good initial goal to have. It is very attainable to set aside 10% of your income. And one thing that Arcad highlights in the book, and that I'll highlight here, is that if you were to take 10% of your income and set it aside, you'll be amazed at how you're able to live off of 90%. There's this concept of lifestyle inflation. When you get a paycheck or when you get a bonus, it's easy to spend that money. Your mortgage payment didn't magically go up when you got a bonus, but somehow you ended up spending all that extra money. So you can then do the reverse of that and look for ways to save that money. And with that, I'll give you 3 practical steps to help you save 10% of your paycheck. The first thing that I did was start budgeting every dollar. When I got a paycheck, I put it into a budget so that every single dollar was accounted for in my budget. And then using the same budgeting tool, as I went through life and I made transactions, and say I budgeted $100 for groceries, then I went to the store and paid $100 for those groceries, I logged that transaction in my budget. Now the tool I use is called YNAB, and it provides an app so that when you're at the grocery store, you can log that transaction, which is then reflected on your budget, so it keeps everything in sync. It makes it very streamlined. You can do this in a number of ways. It's just a matter of intentionally budgeting every dollar and then sticking to the budget with your expenses. Once I started budgeting every dollar, I found multiple things in my budget that I was spending money on that I realized I didn't need to. So I cut back on a lot of areas, and just that alone, I was able to save a tremendous amount of my income. The second step I'd recommend is price shopping everything. My wife and I recognized that we were paying a pretty high price for the apartment that we were living in, and we ended up moving 2 more times in order to find a better price. We are now in a place that is very comfortable for us, but we're paying less than $1,000 a month, and we're able to save up for a house. I also did this with my car. I used to drive a BMW, and then I sold that and got a beater Honda Civic. And the list goes on from there with all the things I went through in my budget and price shopped. From where I live to what I drive to car insurance, you name it, I was price shopping everything. So that is the second way in how you can start to save 10% of your income. The third example that I'll give is increasing your income. This one's a little bit more challenging, but I did this in 2 ways. I started a lawn care side hustle, so I mow lawns on the side, and I also went out and got a new job. I worked for about 5 years as an analyst for a software company, realized I wasn't really getting any promotions or pay raises. It was just due to finances with that specific company, but I went out and looked for a new job, and I'm now a senior analyst with a different company, and I got a pretty significant bump in pay. So these practical steps between budgeting every dollar, then price shopping all the items left in your budget, and then realizing you can only save so much, but you may need to increase your income, going out and starting a side hustle or getting a new job, whatever the case is for you, those are some steps that I took in order to save a lot of my income. Currently, I have 2 kids and a wife, so I'm supporting through health insurance and food and everything. I have a family to support here, but I'm still able to save about 33% of my income. And that's the highlight of the first principle in this book. The Richest Man in Babylon, Arcad, emphasizes the need to save your money, either by reducing what you're spending or making more money, or when you do make more money, don't spend it, put into savings. His starting point is 10%. There's a lot of other principles in this book that he goes through in how to grow your wealth, but this is where it starts, by recognizing that the money that you make is yours to keep. And if you're able to save a portion, that will help grow your wealth. In future videos, we'll get into what to do with that money and how to save it or how to invest it and what to do with debt and a whole list of other things that are listed in this book. But for now, think through what it would take for you to take 10% of your income and then live on 90%. And I'll close with this, that most of the principles either in this book or budgeting every dollar, which is what I do, or anything when it comes to finances, what I'm finding in my own financial journey is that it is about 10% math, 90% behavior. It's more about my approach in tackling the problem and me being proactive and intentional with the money that I have. It's not so much a complex math equation that you have to figure out. It's all the mental game. It's committing to the journey and recognizing if I want to budget every dollar, that's going to be a big commitment. I have to commit to budgeting every month and then tracking that spending. I found tools to help streamline that process, but it is still a mental commitment to do. So being very intentional with your money will help you on this journey. And again, it's 10% math, about 90% behavior. I just came up with that kind of on the fly, so it's not like a statistic found anywhere, but it's just what I'm finding in my own financial journey. I hope this video helps you in your financial journey and building your own wealth. If you did enjoy it, I ask that you please like and subscribe. Thank you.